Hello and welcome everyone. Let's take a journey back in time from the area of the Vikings through many changes in the history to modern day Scandinavia. Imagine that you have a piece of text, it's written in Swedish, but you don't know from which area it is. I know, a bit strange question to ask. You don't know if it's a language written by and used by Vikings, or maybe it's a dialect from 16th century royalties in Sweden, or maybe it is, perhaps, contemporary Swedish. Let's imagine that you have a tool which can answer those questions for you. A specific system which can take any piece of text, analyze it, and accurately identify the historical period it belongs to. Sounds like a dream? Well, it's closer to reality than you may think, thanks to machine learning, of course. So let's dive into how you can build such system in with machine learning in .NET and how it can work. So get ready for a fascinating journey through time, language, and technology. My name is Gaszewski, and I'm working as IT consultant at Soprasteria Sweden. I'm software engineer specialist in Microsoft.NET Platform, and I'm as well academic teacher at University in Lublin. I have 4 points today. How I ended up here with the subject, I'll tell you a bit about languages itself, and we will be talking about ML.NET in the end. So, the spark of curiosity, how I ended up here. So, this is the map. I marked Sweden here, and Swedish language is language spoken in Sweden. I know, shocking. It has about 10 million of native speakers all over the world. It's the most spoken Nordic language, and Swedish language belongs to Germanic languages, like family of languages. And I moved to Sweden a couple of years ago. I already could speak Swedish, but I wanted to take it to the next level, and I wanted not only to learn language, but as well study the language. So assigned to Linnaeus University to study Swedish language. And this is the list of my courses at the first term, and this one, Språkhistoria, was one of the most exciting one at the beginning. It's studies of history of the Swedish language, how the language evolved. And then during our examination, we got some example of old Swedish text, and we needed to assess from which area this text is from, and argument as well why. So me as a software engineer, my first thought during the exam was, well, it would be nice to have a tool doing that. You can use machine learning, isn't it? I couldn't do it at the exam, but I could do it later. And here is an example of one of the oldest texts written in Swedish with Latin letters. It's Skånelagen. It's a law from Skåne region in Sweden. It's very old, from 2050. So if you are thinking that, okay, I have pain in my back, in my knees because I'm 30 plus, so you are a baby. This is old, not you. Another thing which was curious for me, when I already could speak a bit Swedish, I went to Paris. I know, fancy. And I went to Pantheon, and I had a chance to check the exhibition about Maria Skłodowska-Curie. They kept her Polish name. That was a bit surprising, positively. And then they have a lot of items related to her, as well her diploma about Nobel Prize. And it's from Swedish committee. It's written in Swedish as well. And I tried to read it. It's from 1903. And I noticed, for example, that there is a text which is beslutat att tilldela hälften of the prize in Swedish, but I noticed that like in English, it's that the committee decided to give half of the prize to Marie and the other half to her husband. And the word of is spelled like wrong. They didn't teach me like this. So the language evolves, and you can notice a lot of changes in the language. I assume that most of you are not speaking Swedish, so I will give you example from English language. Here you have exactly the same text, Lord's Prayer in English. Both of them are in English. The only difference is that the text on the left side is in Old English, and on the right side is contemporary English. The same language, but you can spot some small differences. So the same is with Swedish language and any other language. Even programming languages. Here's an example from C#. Comparison of the code which is doing exactly the same, switch and pattern matching. On the left side you can see like traditional switch statement in C#, and when the C# language evolved to the new versions, we got pattern matching, which looks like this on the right side. So even programming languages are evolving. But there are like some small difficulties when it comes to just Swedish language, which I will need to explain to you briefly. As I said, there are different historical periods, and if you are looking for the Swedish language in particular, then you can distinguish three main areas. The first one is the Viking area, and yes, it's a picture of me, I know, in Vikings Museum in Stockholm. If you are in Sweden someday, I can recommend you the museum. And during the Vikings area, they were using runes, those symbols, as an alphabet. It was not some fancy stuff or some magical symbols, it was actually a written language. The next area is medieval time, Skånelagen, the law which I showed you before, and the modern Dane language, which came when Vasa dynasty came to the power and formed like nowadays Sweden. But it's not as simple as you can see here, because scientists divided those periods as well for early and late Old Swedish and early and late modern Swedish, so it's a bit more complex. And what are the differences? And what are the difficulties? The most difficult part is the first period, which is about Vikings area, because they were using runes. And you can read them, because this is the piece of language, piece of text. And again, this picture is from my hometown. I can just took 10 minutes walk to find such a piece of art from the Viking area with runes in it. And you can see that here around signs, and this is a legitimate text. You can read it and translate it. And this particular one says that G guy and K guy had the stone erected. And usually those stones with runes, there is like symbol that they created this stone and put this text to praise someone or to keep in mind some specific moment in the history that someone built something or won the war, etc. Yes, and there is a continuation for this as well. They are quite repetitive, and you are able to translate them. But how? So this is the same stone, and the first thing which you need to do is write down all the runes, which I did on the right side. You can even compare some parts that I'm not lying, it's not fabricated by AI. Then you need to transliterate it to Latin alphabet. Then you can open special dictionaries to translate it to Old Swedish, and then you can translate it to New Swedish, and then you can translate as well to other languages. So it's a bit work to do, as you can see. And this is the most difficult part. And then it's getting better, because then we have Latin alphabet introduced when the Christianity came to Sweden. And then we have Latin alphabet. You can see example of the Swedish from this period of time on the right side. And they introduce as well a lot of grammatical cases which disappeared right now in Swedish language. What are grammatical cases? We are in Poland right now, and so we are speaking Polish. And in Poland there's a lot of grammatical cases even nowadays. And here is an example of one noun, which is tu. Here is a table of this one word in different cases. So if someone is telling you that Polish language is difficult to learn, so don't worry about it, it's even worse. Anyway, the next period, there's a lot of influence in Swedish language from German languages. I can, as a person who is not native speaker, I can read and understand many of the words from this period. And many German words are even nowadays. Here are some examples. Wichtig and wichtig from German. Those words are both in Swedish and German language nowadays used. Another word which is wife or woman, fru in Swedish and Frau in German. This is like contemporary words, and those words came from Old German to Swedish. The next period starts from 1526, not because they decided, okay, now we are changing our language and we are updating this, but because they translated Bible, and Bible became like a standardization of the text, written Swedish. And what is the standardization? Yes, before you could have word time, which nowadays is called tid in Swedish, written in 4 different ways, depending on who is writing. But with Bible, we have only one way to write it, and it was standardized. And then we have late modern Swedish. Again, it's specific date when they released a new newspaper, so it was even available for a broader audience. Back then it was written then Svenska Argus, which is written like nowadays not correctly. You see the modern Swedish, how it should be written, so there are differences even back then, but it was next step with the standardization. And now we have contemporary Swedish from 1906, when they introduced orthography reform to make some more updates and unify the language. And again, if you remember my picture from the Nobel Prize for Marie Skłodowska-Curie, you could see that the spelling was different, like this, off word as an example. And the reason for that was that she got this prize in 1903, so 3 years before this reform. That's why I spot the differences. Okay, but that was about the Swedish language. And now about the technology, how machine learning can help us with the text in Swedish language. So the first thing, you can choose many different tools, but as I mentioned, I'm a software engineer specialized in Microsoft.NET, so for me, a natural way is to use ML.NET, which is open source cross-platform framework from Microsoft. If you are already .NET developer and can C# or other language from Microsoft, then it's easy to start using this and incorporate the ML.NET in your projects. And the nice thing is that you do not need to have deep knowledge about machine learning. You do not need to have science and math behind all the methods. You just need to know how to run ML.NET. And how to do it? It's easy. It's like 6-step recipe, I can say. First, you need to collect your data. Then you need to clean the data. The third step is categorization. So you have a bunch of data and you need to categorize them to different categories. Then you can train your model. When you train your model with your data which you gather and clean, then you can evaluate if your model is working properly, and then you can use it in real applications. So how I did that? The first step, data collection. I needed to collect the data for all different periods because the Swedish language looked differently in every period. So the first one, regarding the Viking area, I opened Uppsala University website. They have free Scandinavian runic text database, so I could download this. For medieval time, there is Fornsvenska Textbanken. It's fully in Swedish, but you have great access to many different texts and papers from medieval time written like in the text which you can like copy-paste. And the contemporary Swedish was easy to get. But that was the first step, collecting the data. Second step is pre-processing of the data, like cleaning the data. And this is one of the most difficult or most time-consuming tasks. And this is a warning for you, because using ML.NET is very easy, but everything before training the model, it's time-consuming. You need to understand the data. That's why I told you about the Swedish language history. And you need to know how to deal with them. And here's an example from Scandinavian runic text database. This is an example of transliterated runes from the stone. But as you see, there are some dots, and probably the stone maybe was broken, or maybe the rune was not readable, so there is like blank space. Is it worth to use this to train our model? Maybe not necessarily, because then our model will not work properly. So we need to dig into the data, clean them, choose this which is suitable for the training. Another example from medieval texts, I wanted to have like meanings to train my data, so I was searching for like dots to identify every single meaning. And here you see, for example, there are separate paragraphs and numbers. Those numbers are pages numbers. I do not need them when I'm training my model. So I cannot just automatically read the content of the website and put it to my model. I need to actually pre-process this and clean. And there are many other stuff, as maybe you can spot, which is supposed to be cleaned as well. Another example from the database with texts, I had a text from the theater with roles. I do not want to have like Fröken Sofia, which is one of the characters, her name spotted multiple times, because this will influence my model. So I need to as well clean such text. So it's time consuming and challenging, but when I was done, then I can go to the next step, which is categorization. And for every period, I choose a number, like enumeration, and assign to every meaning. And my data for my model look like this. How to train the model is very easy. You open Visual Studio, create new solution, and add machine learning model. Easy like this. Then you need to choose the scenario. In my case, text classification. You need to pull your data, and then you need to press the button to train your model. After this, you are able to evaluate, and I put some meaning in contemporary Swedish. So in my case, it was number 5, the categorization, and you see the result. My model assessed that it's contemporary Swedish with 87% of accuracy. And when I'm happy with my model, I can build console app, web API, or any other app and consume and use my model for my real business applications. How I tested this in my beautiful application, console app, I used other texts, I knew from which periods they are, and I checked if my model is responding correctly. And in many cases, I got very good result, like 90%. It's wonderful. But in corner cases, it's not working very well. So if you like the subject and you would like to talk about this with me after the presentation, you can scan the code. It's to my LinkedIn profile. Ping me. We can chat after the presentation. We can do it in messages, and I can send you as well slides from this session. So that's it. Thank you so much.